contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Today is Friday. It is a football Friday, and we're coming to the end of the college football season. In fact, tomorrow, the biggest day of the season in college football until we get to the 12-team playoff and, of course, bowl season as well. We'll preview the games with Bill Bender coming up a little bit later in the program. Also diving into the latest in the National Football League as well. Great game on Thursday Night Football. And naturally, we're getting you ready for the weekend of college and pro basketball here as well with the latest news, notes, and information exclusively here on SportsGrid. Let's start off with perhaps the game of the year on Thursday Night Football. The Detroit Lions victorious over the Green Bay Packers in a game that saw 65 points on a Thursday night. You don't generally see that often, but the Lions offense was humming. They went for it in a lot of different fourth down spots, including on their own 30. The Packers failed to score on a couple of different drives, which really ended up costing them the game. Jared Goff threw a couple of touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, by the way, any bets on him you had last night came through. 3 touchdowns on the ground for Josh Jacobs as well. But safe to say at this point, the Lions have now taken a stranglehold over the division lead, specifically over the Packers with that win yesterday. Of course, the Vikings are still lurking a little bit, but let's get to Dan Campbell, who has a decimated defense and needed the offense to come through.
What we were going to need going in, the style that we needed to play with, and we wanted that defense just cut it loose. Just go play, man. Effort, finish, and man, they did that. God, they did that. It's a hell of a job by AG, and those guys just laid it on the line, man. They call them the Northern Savages. They just roll right in the door, man. In the game. It's a hell of a job. And then our offense, we knew they were going to need to carry the load. You need to carry a little bit more of the backpacks and such. And man, we did that. They did that, stepped up in a big way. And it was a number of guys really made plays for us across the board, And it took everybody we had on offense. And, Goff had another big game. TP was big. Laporta made some big plays for us. So, look, you can go down the line, but, man, I was proud of them. And, I just love the fact we just find a way, man. And you feel like the narrative You know, the narrative going in, man, we weren't buying any of the stuff about where we were at, and no excuses. And our guys knew where we were at. We don't need to talk about being tough. We don't need to talk about being resilient. We live it, and it's what we are. And, man, we just proved it again. Proud of our guys.
Lions just keep on winning, charging their way to the number 1 seed in the NFC. Packers probably going to be in the playoffs, but this loss is going to hurt them in terms of their seeding in the wild card. Matt LaFleur felt like this was one that got away from them.
Obviously, extremely disappointed for our guys. I thought it was one of those games that we knew exactly how it was going to be. It was going to be a hard-fought, back-and-forth game, and that's what it was. But I thought our guys did a good job coming out the second half, kind of getting the momentum by going down, scoring a touchdown, hitting the big play to Christian, then defensively getting the takeaway and converting that into points. And but ultimately, I thought we just started, especially on the offensive side of the ball, too slow. I mean, we go punt, fumble, then we score a touchdown. So, you know, it's only a handful of plays that separate these types of games. And like I told our team, I mean, we're going to have to earn the right to potentially come back here. And it's not going to be easy, and we got to put in the work. And but I'm confident in the resiliency of our group, and that they're going to continue to fight and push each other to get better and stay connected, because I do think we have a pretty good football team.
And good coaches. LaFleur and Campbell seem to be doing a good job for their teams. Once upon a time, Bill Belichick did a really good job with the New England Patriots, won a bunch of rings. Is he now searching for a college football gig? Well, that appears to be the case. Apparently, he interviewed for the coaching vacancy left by Mac Brown for the University of North Carolina. Among other candidates are Tulane's head coach John Sumrall, Georgia's defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann, and others. Belichick did interview for the Atlanta Falcons job in the offseason. He didn't end up getting it. Remains to be seen if Belichick would leave the possibility open of taking an NFL gig, or maybe he goes to college. We'll see. Dallas Cowboys play on Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. They won't have Zach Martin, their all-pro guard, for it. He's out for the season. He turned 34 last month. He's under contract through next year. Has a restructured deal as well. We'll see what ends up happening if they end up keeping him, because he's got $40 million guaranteed. But he's having season-ending ankle surgery, so he's done. Buccaneers running back Bucky Irvin did not practice on Thursday. He's been great, but the Buccaneers may not have him for their game this weekend. We'll see. And speaking of running backs, the Chicago Bears, well, they could be down to nothing. Roschon Johnson has a concussion. He hasn't practiced this week. DeAndre Swift did not practice as well, so that means third stringer Travis Homer could be next in line to start there. Also, the NFL released their potential NFL Man of the Year award winners. They'll announce it on February the 6th. In the NBA, the best team has been the Cleveland Cavaliers from start to finish. That continued last night. They improved to now 20-3. Best start ever for them. 126-114 win over the Denver Nuggets. And by the way, the story of this game, 22 3-pointers, and they've made at least 10 threes. 28 games dating back to last season. So no surprise after the game, Donovan Mitchell said that was the key to victory.
You know, early on, the twos were kind of easy. You know, I think making it tough. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we made, how many threes we make today? 20. I mean, they made 6. So, like, if it's, you can go to Boston Celtics route and just do it a numbers thing. But, like, at the end of the day, we made it tough. You know, like, Jay did a phenomenal job. Ed did a phenomenal job on Jokic. You know, 27 shots, trying to make it as tough as we can. You're not going to stop a guy like Jokic. He's always going to find the back cuts and offensive rebounds and things like that. But I think we just made it tougher. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing, because you have to give up something, you know. And I think not letting them kind of get, you know, freebies in transition, so we're sprinting back in transition, making it tougher. That's all you can ask for. You know, if they hit them, they hit them. But at the end of the day, we're making them have to work for them. I think that's kind of what you see. But yeah, typically when you give up 76 points in the paint, but you know, we didn't give up 2 things. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what it was. And there's gonna be nights where, you know, we do give up 2 things and we'll lose a game because of that. But tonight, being able to, all right, cool, we were making it tough, but also eliminating the catch and shoot threes as well.
Washington Wizards could use a 3-point shooter or 2. They were not expected to be a great team in the NBA this season. I know that, but they were also not expected to be 2-18. They lost again yesterday, 137-101. Wizards are up against it. Grizzlies, without Ja Morant at the end of the game, hold on to beat the Kings 115-110. And Giannis and the Bucks have the marquee matchup in the NBA tonight as they travel to Boston. Now, for those of you interested in college football, we got games tonight as well. Conference Championship Week is underway this evening. Boise State on the turf, 3.5-point favorites against UNLV, total 57.5. Conference USA, Jacksonville State takes on Western Kentucky. And in the AAC, Tulane will take on Army with a total of 45.5. Of course, Army plays Navy next week. UCLA notably firing their offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy, although there's some discrepancy here because his agent says Bieniemy was going to return to the NFL anyway next year. We'll see. Michigan signs athletic director Ward Manuel to a 5-year contract extension. Utah State has a new college football coach, may be familiar with the name, Bronco Mendenhall's leaving New Mexico, and he'll coach Utah State. Also, the Oakland Athletics, formerly known as Oakland, now known as Sacramento, and in the future known as Las Vegas, signed Luis Severino, pitcher of the New York Mets, to a $67 million contract, 3 years, largest contract in the history of the A's. And the A's also got more good news yesterday as they have cleared another hurdle for their upcoming Vegas stadium. They had a vote yesterday. They seem to be pushing forward despite the price tag in the billions for their new stadium. In college basketball, Penn State beats Purdue by a final of 81-70. And also TCU holds on in the second half for a home win against Xavier, final 76-72. In that one, Illinois tonight will take on Northwestern. And the Georgetown Hoyas are 9.5-point underdogs tonight as they travel to take on West Virginia. Coming up next, the matchups that we have been waiting for. Thursday night football, well, that was great. What do we get tonight on Friday night football with UNLV and Boise State, both with playoff aspirations? I'll tell you next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We got Bill Bender of Sporting News here, getting ready to watch all the college football games this week because next week we only have one in Army-Navy. So let's get to championship weekend with Bill of Sporting News. And immediately, let's take a look, Bill, at the top 25 here. You and I talked about this earlier in the week. It does seem pretty straightforward. Look, no matter what, Bill, here's what's going to happen. And I think people are losing sight of this. everyone is debating the 11 seed, the 12 seed, the 13 seed. Bill, it would be no different if we were down to 4 or if it was just 2. We're always going to debate the back end. But I personally think a pretty clean, neat job is in store, provided that things go the way that they're supposed to. Now, if they don't, we'll be back here on Tuesday complaining. But for now, I really don't see an issue with how these teams are ranked.
No, and if SMU beats Clemson, it'll just be where the teams are seated. Because I think we'll have our 12. It will be pretty clean. You know, Iowa State and Arizona State will figure it out. You mentioned Boise State and UNLV. They'll figure it out tonight. You'll have your 12 teams. That 13 through 16, they're always going to complain. If we went to 16, number 17 is going to complain. So I'm with you. I think as long as SMU beats Clemson, we're not going to have that really big debate unless you're Miami, who the committee decided on Tuesday. Alabama was ahead of Miami. We talked about that earlier in the week.
Yeah, and look, Miami had a better season than Alabama did, wins and losses record-wise. But if you did not watch the Hurricanes play all season long in those games and they almost lost, then I just don't know what to tell you. I mean, they could have had 4 or 5 losses this season. I mean, it's funny that people want to play the result when it's convenient, and then they don't want to play the result when it's convenient too. You can't have it both ways. All right, so Boise State tonight takes on UNLV. The Rebels are really good. 3.5-point favorite, Boise State on the turf, usually a much bigger favorite in championship situations. Money line of minus 188, total of 57.5. So I guess let's start, Bill, with the thinking that generally the way that this goes is that in rivalry week, we always get a lot of upsets, and then the chalk tends to win in championship situations because the teams are, sometimes they're at home. Is that the scenario you think that plays out tonight?
I like these Group of 5 conference championship games on home campuses. It adds a little bit more to the game, and I think in this case for Boise State, it's going to give them a decided advantage. Maddox Matson, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 165 passer rating at home. So it's not just about Ashton Genty, who they're going to give the ball to 25 to 30 times. I think they'll feed off the energy at home. They've been there, done that. Doesn't mean UNLV is not a great story, or that Hajj Malik Williams might not have a good game, but I think Boise State sews it up. And there's something to be said. You know, they were the Group of 5 buster. They were the original BCS buster, and here they are have a chance to maybe get in the playoff and even get a first-round bye.
Yeah, if they lose, though, Bill, we would agree they're out, right?
They're out, and UNLV would be the 12. And then we're just working the bracket from 11 up at that point. I don't think UNLV could be any higher than 12.
Right, and other teams would get in over Boise State without a doubt, especially with them losing at home if they were to lose tonight. Okay, one of the hottest teams in all of college football. Nobody had this one. Arizona State taking on Iowa State in the Big 12 championship, and I believe this is also a noon game. Is that correct? Is that right? Noon game? Total of 49.5. But again, nobody hotter than ASU. Odds makers are telling us maybe Iowa State is the better team here, though, Bill.
Yeah, and the Big 12 championship games typically one of the more exciting ones. 4 of the last 5 one-score games. Texas blew out Oklahoma State last year. But the good thing about this matchup is the things Arizona State does well, Iowa State struggles with. They run the football. Iowa State's run defense has been unreliable. Cam Scatterbo could have a big game. And then Iowa State's pretty methodical on offense, and Arizona State will have some blips. Jordan Tyson, big injury for the Sun Devils. They're going to have to be able to throw the ball without their stud receiver. I think it adds up to a super exciting game, but I like Arizona State to win. And that would lock them, if Boise State wins, Arizona State will probably be the 12, and Boise State will be get that bye week. But doesn't take away from this season the Sun Devils have had, and will be excited. I would have them against Notre Dame at that point. So they better bring their winter coats to South Bend.
It's been a long time since ASU has been relevant, without a doubt there. All right, so, generally speaking, I think had Clemson beaten South Carolina, this probably would have been a pick-em. So that's what this game is telling you. The narrative is playing, Bill, basically how does Clemson respond after a crushing loss like that? Usually teams do not in this scenario. They're taking on SMU. They've had a fantastic season, 2.5-point favorites, total of 55.5. It's still right there for Clemson, Bill. It is. But my gosh, the body language so bad last week after that crushing loss to South Carolina. I'm not seeing it. I think SMU is going to win the ACC.
I do too. But I do think there's room for entertainment here. It's in Clemson's backyard. There'll be a lot of Clemson fans there. There'll be a lot of SMU fans there too. Watch how Clemson stops the run early. Rashad Smith averaging 6 yards per carry could get SMU going. If they score early, I could see all those things happening. But keep saying all week, keep looking at this fact that Dabo Swinney's 8-1 in this game. 8-1, and that's a lot to overcome. They're not going to get out-athleted in this game. They have the talent advantage in some ways, but I think SMU is a better football team. They win the game. There's no controversies around the ACC. The Mustangs get a bye week, and I know I didn't have SMU and Boise State getting first-round byes back in August. I could lie and say I did.
No, and nobody had SMU. I mean, Boise State, you never know. Once every 3 or 4 years, they're in there. But I assume you're picking Texas to beat Georgia because I see you have them number 2 as your top 4 seeds. But Georgia's going to the playoff regardless, I would assume.
I picked Texas. I don't feel great about it. I want to see how they respond. Both teams had these emotional rivalry games last weekend. I think Texas has been a little more put together, and they'll learn from the first time out. That first half against Georgia last time was bad, but the second half was pretty even. I think if Texas can get a running game going with Quintravion Wisner, they find a way to win in Atlanta. But then again, that's a decided home field advantage of sorts for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, and finally, let's take a look at Bill's projected matchups here, which would be ASU at Notre Dame. As Bill mentioned, that's going to be tough for Arizona State to go into that environment. I would agree. Alabama, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, Tennessee, Georgia. Bill, all the games look fun.
Yeah, it'll be easy. Then I'm sure it's all correct. Nothing will mess that up this weekend, will it?
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, Bill, enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got a preview of the Big 12 championship. We'll hear from one of the head coaches involved. Also, the Big 10 championship as well. And it appears that several teams are not happy with the rankings in the college football playoff. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, let's begin with one of the teams that's on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. There are actually a couple in the SEC. One is South Carolina. The other one is University of Mississippi. They had some really close, tight losses this season. And Lane Kiffin, the head coach of the Rebels, has not spared any words for the committee, essentially saying that his team deserves to be in, even potentially over Alabama. You know, some of these things do make some sense. Kiffin went off on this at a press conference yesterday, essentially saying that all of college football needs to have its own leagues. Take a listen.
It's why it's just different. It's just totally different. And these comparisons of other conferences and ACC and Big 12, I mean, it's just like, you might as well be in different leagues, not conferences, different leagues. You know, like here's the NFL, here's the SEC, here's those few Big 10 teams, and then here's everybody else. So you're going to see it in the draft. You know, it'll be different, like it always is with the SEC, the amount of kids drafted out of here and there. And so it's really a bad system. Here you go. You got me going. It's just a bad system. It's a bad system, and you got people in there in place of it. And I don't know, they gave me the list of the coaches today. You know, any of those coaches ever been down here in the Deep South into these stadiums and played in these games that are on this? So how do they even know? How do they even know what it's like to have to go win in these stadiums, in these places, and on the road of teams that they say, well, these teams are 500 teams, and we have, you know, the week where the three favorites all lose on, you know, the senior day and night in three of the hardest stadiums in America to play. It's much different than where these other conferences go and play their, you know, 6-6 teams that they got to go play, or 5-5 teams at the time. Just totally different.
Shots fired by Lane Kiffin. All right, now let's get to the big game in the Big Ten Championship. We've got, of course, Penn State taking on Oregon. Really big opportunity for the Nittany Lions to make the big jump. Head coach James Franklin knows about this big opportunity, but certainly they're not going to be favored in this one. We'll have to make things happen in order to win.
Yeah, we're excited to play Oregon. Great opportunity, playing the number one team in the country. We're excited about that. That's what we control. That's what we're focused on, not focused on anything else. I mean, I understand the question, and I appreciate the question, but we're just focused on trying to beat the number one team in the country, Oregon, in Indianapolis, in the Big Ten, and just totally focused on that and not any of the other scenarios or discussions. You want to stay ahead of the sticks. Starting fast against this type of team is going to be really important. We're going to have to play well for 4 quarters. You look at them statistically as well on film. They've been a dominant football team all year long. Obviously, the Ohio State film is good for us. That was a close competitive game for us and for them.
I think the most intriguing game potentially on the slate is this Iowa State-Arizona State Big 12 Championship. First year for Arizona State playing in the Big 12 Championship, and also going to have to get it done at noon Eastern time, so different body clock for them as well. Iowa State, of course, is basically getting into a situation that they haven't been before. Let's hear from Matt Campbell, the head coach.
You know, I just think for me, I think any coach that, man, you always reflect back on never the wins, but you reflect on the losses, you know, and obviously that game, that moment was a great learning opportunity for all of us. I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of those. I probably can reflect on those way more than any of our wins during our time. And, you know, that one, obviously you sting just because, you know, you felt like, man, you played pretty good football that day, but not good enough. And, you know, I think it was another great lesson of, man, what'd you learn? How do you grow? And, you know, if you ever get an opportunity to be back in that moment, you know, what can you do best to continue to grow forward? And every team's different. So, I think some of that is what it is as well. But, you know, you felt for that senior class and those kids who, man, that was a really special group, another group very much like this one that, you know, were able to do things that have never been done in the history of this school and, you know, had great leadership. And so I think anytime you have those type of players and you have that kind of group, you really want to do everything in its power for them to reach every opportunity of success that they can have.
College football today, tomorrow morning, exclusively here on SportsGrid, previewing all the games. Be right back.
she was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. Got some updates very specifically from the CEO of DraftKings, Jason Robins, holding court at some gaming conferences and some news from that. Sam, thanks for coming on NewsWire and happy holidays to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. Happy holidays to you as well.
All right, let's get started. When Jason Robins speaks, we tend to talk about it here on the show, and you guys write about it over at Legal Sports Report. There are some surprises when you come on, and some stories we surprise me when you come on. This is the least surprising story that we would start off with, but let's tell it. People love betting on parlays, and that's why these companies like DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM are making all of their money. That's the simple way of me saying it. Maybe you can give me the more intricate description.
Yeah, definitely. It's been the theme of just sports betting in the last 2 years, is you see these companies like DraftKings, like FanDuel leading the way, making these huge investments on product, which has then translated into better parlays, more easy to use systems, more markets available. And then you see that in their marketing as well. I think at this time last year when I was opening up a sports betting app, or maybe 2 years ago rather, you would have boosts on games or boosts on bets. Now almost all those boosts and all those promos are incentivizing you to do a parlay or a same game parlay. Even more importantly, Morgan Stanley just came out with this new survey data, which was really interesting. It said about 48% of all bets that people placed last year or this entire year were parlays or same game parlays, which isn't surprising, but it's a little stark to see that data out there. These are high margin bets for sports books, low margin bets for sports bettors. Essentially, they advertise them as kind of lottery tickets that you bet. And when somebody, bets $5 to win $1 million or something, that's actually really good for the sports books because they can advertise it online, and it gets a lot of free advertising as well. So no surprises there in terms of how this has grown. Morgan Stanley detailing that it's especially in newer states where, sportsbooks launched more recently, parlays are even more popular. I think Louisiana, it was almost 60% of all bets that people placed there were parlays, which is just staggering when you think about how sports betting has traditionally operated over the years. But yeah, you see that translate in hold rate increasing for operators. And it's no surprising that companies like DraftKings are now really inching towards profitability or have had some profitable quarters. So it's just going to continue to see this product development go on. And yeah, not surprising to hear the DraftKings is kind of ahead on it.
Yeah, and more from Jason Robbins at this conference called Craig Hallam Online Gaming Conference. I noticed you guys wrote about this over at Legal Sports Report. And, Robbins, I think, saying all the right things here. The last thing that he wants to do is make himself and his company look out to be a giant or a monster by not letting any of the other sports, gambling operators come in, especially those of these that are not public, like DraftKings and FanDuel. So he opened the door, it seems like, Sam, for other, smaller levels of competition, not for his company, but maybe for some others.
Yeah, it's a great takeaway from you there, Craig, that he wants to position DraftKings as FanDuel, even though they have this duopoly where they are about 77% of the market. He's saying, no, others can still survive and still compete, albeit just on a much smaller scale than us. And we're going to continue to grow our brand. It was pretty interesting to hear him kind of talk about the long-term future he sees for other sports betting operators. He said basically that there's a place for them to exist. They just have to kind of calm down and not try to take all of our market share and figure out how to do it more at a profitable rate. Essentially, companies like BetMGM, companies like Penn, which runs ESPN Bet, which a few years ago and even recently with ESPN Bet came out and said, we want to grab all this market share and pump the promos. And Robbins was saying at this conference, we kind of have demonstrated that that's not how you do things. You can't just come out and grab a bunch of market share and hold on to it. We saw ESPN Bet try to do that last year. They had, I want to say, almost 12% of the market when they were pumping out all their promos. Now they're about 3 or 4%. So that stuff is played out. He talked about how these companies need to do it the way that DraftKings and FanDuel have done it, which is through product, like we talked about previously. And we've seen these companies make huge investments. DraftKings developed SB Tech. That was a long-term thing, but that gave it the tool to sort of go back and have its own technology where it obviously has paid off a lot with the proliferation of parlays. We've seen Penn try to do that with the Score. It was like a $2 billion purchase. They're still integrating that technology. We've seen BetMGM has actually started to pay off a little bit with their purchase of Angstrom Sports, which they're now saying is giving them a better parlay product. And you're seeing them gain share in places as well. So pretty interesting from Robbins to kind of say that these companies can't exist. It's just you got to figure out how to do it at a smaller scale that doesn't compete with us, because he sees DraftKings and FanDuel just continuing to dominate the market and frankly have raised the bar at a level that's kind of out of reach for these other operators now.
Yeah, it just there's nothing has changed to sort of verify any other opinion than that. I mean, that's just basically the bottom line, except for, like, for example, here in Florida, where those companies are not active. It's the Hard Rock app. So if everyone is equal and everyone is allowed, it has been those two companies that have dominated since sports betting has been legal. All right, finally, let's get to the fantasy operators here, Underdog and Prize Picks. I know they have been under a lot of fire here over the past year. These peer-to-peer and also some of the picking games have been banned in some different places. What's the latest on those two companies?
Yeah, this is kind of relates to what we were just talking about in terms of competition and other operators that have existed. Basically, at this time last year, these companies, Prize Picks and Underdog, offering products that a lot of people have said, hey, these are just player prop parlays. They were under fire in over a dozen states. And there was a real thought in the entire industry that maybe these companies won't exist anymore, won't be able to kind of offer this sports betting adjacent product. Now you fast forward a year later, they're in more states with a different kind of product. They've shifted from this player versus house format where I would pick overs and unders on 3 players or more, bet or place $10 in entry fees to win maybe 100, 200, something like that. They've shifted the mechanism with how the money works. So instead of playing against the house, you're playing in a pool of peers where the prizes are determined based off of what other people have put on the line. So it sounds kind of convoluted, but it's essentially allowing them to, keep offering the same games in more markets with kind of the same structure. And it's really paying off for them. We've seen investment banks saying that they now make up about 32 or 30 to 37% of all downloads this sports betting, this NFL season combined with sports betting apps. And their downloads are up about 67% overall, while the rest of the market kind of consolidates towards DraftKings and FanDuel. So Underdog kind of led the way with this peer-to-peer shift, going to the state saying, I know you want to crack down on this. I know you don't want us to offer our products anymore. We'll now do it a different way. And they've used that to expand the market, expand the offerings, and we're seeing it pay dividends for them as well. So what was kind of a huge story last year, they've kind of really turned into an advantage for the company. And we've even seen companies like DraftKings follow suit with their own pick'em products in different states. So they kind of laid out this blueprint, and it seems to be working for them. Now, they still offer the player versus house product in states like California, states like Texas, where sports betting is illegal. That's kind of going to be the next battleground where this shakes out, whether or not they can keep doing that, whether those states, I don't know, wake up, whether those states finally care, whether they do care at all. California is examining it, but we don't know when that's going to happen. And whether the sports books now are kind of just okay with, where this is shaken out, if they see this as kind of a win for them, or if, the fantasy companies have kind of turned this around and say, we're just going to change the product and go to more markets because it seems to be working.
Yeah, it does. All right, Sam, have a great weekend. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks. You too, Craig. Happy holidays.
All right, you too, Sam. Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. ESPN making an announcement a short time ago. Pro Football Hall of Famer Randy Moss, of course, had an illustrious career in the NFL, has been part of their shows, has announced that he's taking a leave of absence away from television to focus on his health. For those of you unfamiliar, he made an announcement last week that he's going through some health or personal struggle. So naturally wish all the best to Randy Moss. Hopefully good health there as well. Updated line for tonight in the big championship in the West. It is 3.5-point favorites for Boise State tonight. That's where it is. Total 57.5. Mountain West Championship on the blue turf. Doesn't get any better than that. We got it covered for you tonight. Gabe and Sports Rage, of course, will have the finale of the Mountain West. We'll take a quick time out here on the show. Rich Cirminiello joins us next to break down more college football. Don't go away.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Pretty much an award season in college football. Great to have Rich Cirminiello here, of course. Vice President of College Awards, Maxwell Football Club. And naturally, he's a contributor here to SportsGrid. So who better to talk to ahead of championship weekend and get a feel for how things are going to go than Rich? Thanks again for coming on the show, Rich. And it seems pretty straightforward. I know there's a lot of complaining right now. Of course, that's always going to be the case, whether you have 2 teams or 4 or 12 teams that are not getting in, want to be in. But I got to say, if things go the way they're supposed to, it'll be clean. But generally, that doesn't happen, right? We're going to get some crazy upset this weekend.
Yeah, Craig, great to be with you, first off. November's never clean. We've seen that over the past few weeks. I don't think December's going to be clean either. But we do have more clarity as we head into championship weekend. I'm actually calling this round zero. You know, we have week 0 in college football in August, right? Get that small handful of games. We don't want to call it week 1. This is round 0 of the playoffs, and I kind of love it. I mean, there are some play-in games. Big 12 is going to be a play-in game. Later tonight, Mountain West, UNLV, Boise State, that's going to be a play-in game for the playoffs. And then we'll have a lot of jockeying for position. You know, is it Oregon or Penn State that gets a bye? Is it Georgia or Texas? I think it's going to be fascinating. This is one of my favorite times of the year. We really get a chance to kind of settle down, focus on a smaller slate of games. The fog of war, that's the regular season where you have anywhere from 60 to 70 games. Kind of tough to focus. Tonight and then Saturday, I think, is going to be fantastic for college fans.
Definitely so. So do you want to put on your Lane Kiffin shirt or your Shane Beamer shirt and stump for anyone here? Because, or even your Mario Cristobal. Everyone is complaining right outside the top 12 that they should be in, and they are not. Did you find these rankings satisfactory? Do you think where we stand right now is a job well done, or would you have adjusted anything?
Yeah, I would say job well done. I don't have a ton of complaints. If I had to put a jersey on, it might be Shane Beamer, only because I've gradually fallen in love with this South Carolina football team. So much youth on both sides of the ball. And Norris Sellers, quarterback, is a redshirt freshman. Dylan Stewart, one of the top true freshmen in the country, the edge rusher. It's a good mix of veterans and youth. They've gotten hot at the right time. I don't think it's going to matter because I don't think there's a way they can jump Alabama, who they lost to 27-25 earlier in the season. You know what jersey I want to put on, Craig? And I may not have to if they win tomorrow night. But how about SMU? I find this situation fascinating because SMU's in a position that if they beat Clemson in Charlotte in the ACC title game, they're not only going to get to the playoffs as an automatic conference champ, but they're going to get a bye. They're going to be the number 3 seed. But if they lose their championship game, I think they're probably out. It's going to come down to SMU or Alabama. I think the committee's going to go with the higher profile SEC team, the team that has more high profile wins over the likes of Georgia. But it's an interesting conundrum for SMU because you almost wish they didn't have to play the game. If they didn't play tomorrow night as the number 8 ranked team right now, they'd obviously automatically be in. So feast or famine for the Mustangs tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely so. And these semifinal locations are not rooting for SMU either, rooting for some of those other schools that you talked about, traveling teams, TV teams. SMU not one of them, but I'm with you. I mean, I love to see new teams in there, and the Mustangs have definitely deserved it. All right, great championship in the SEC, of course. It is Texas against Georgia. Longhorns 2.5-point favorites, total of 49.5. Texas has had these blips on their radar this season where they have not looked like the number 2 team in the country. And Georgia, if you just eliminate the first halves of some games, look like the best team in the country. But we can't do that, can we, Rich? Can't eliminate halves, can we?
No. I know Kirby Smart would like to do that. It's been a really inconsistent year for Georgia. And Carson Beck in particular, their quarterback, Craig, that was one of the biggest surprises to come out of Athens this year. Looked like legitimate Heisman favorite, could possibly play himself into the top overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. He has been wildly inconsistent throughout the season. Bad reads, bad decisions, forced throws, way too many turnovers. Here's the situation, though. You know, we saw this game earlier this year. I know it's difficult to beat a team twice, but Georgia went into Austin and didn't just beat Texas and hand them their only loss of the year. They abused Texas at the line of scrimmage. The Longhorns may be without their best offensive lineman. Kelvin Banks is not 100%. He looks like a surefire first-round draft pick next year. Georgia's dominance on defense has been suspect throughout the year, but it was not in Austin when they played the Horns. So, give me Kirby Smart in this spot. I think Georgia wins. I think they win the SEC. I think they wind up as the number 2 overall seed in the playoffs. To your point, I agree. Texas has been spotty all year long. I think they get exposed again by the Bulldogs.
All right, we got limited time here, so we're going to skip ahead to Penn State and Oregon. Ducks, number 1 team in the country, Rich, minus 3.5 point favorites, total of 50.5. Shows like ours and shows I'm sure that you appear on, people may take Oregon here. I can't find anybody that's picking Oregon to win the national championship. I guess that's kind of what this tells us. It almost feels like March Madness where no one wants to take the favorite.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think a lot of the money right now is on Georgia and, believe it or not, Ohio State. People have not bailed on Ohio State despite that performance against Michigan. When you look at the roster, it's an odd. There are going to be some tweaks with the playoffs moving forward. There are some odd situations here that teams like Notre Dame, no conference championship game, Ohio State out of the Big Ten picture, actually have an advantage. And you now have more time to prepare, more time to rest before we get to December 20th or 21st. First round of the playoffs. I like Oregon here. I still have my doubts about James Franklin, Penn State in general, Drew Aller, their quarterback in this spot. Give me Oregon in this game to cover the 3.5. I think they win the title, but I agree. I don't think they win the national championship.
All right, real quick, here's Rich's top 4 seeds. He's got Oregon, Georgia, Boise State. So clearly he feels Boise State wins tonight and Arizona State wins tomorrow. And then here are Rich's first round games: Clemson against Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Penn State. Rich, enjoy all the action. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
We'll wrap it up next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors now showing up on the injury report, and the Giants apparently will make a decision about his status going into the weekend. So make sure you tune in to Scott Farrell Coast to Coast for the latest injuries in the NFL. Let's wrap up the show now with a little Belichick talk. We'll also get into some Juan Soto talk. Maybe we'll have a Soto decision. and Texas Longhorns mascot talk. Always love talking mascots and things like that. All right, time now for some last licks. Yeah, this one just doesn't add up. It does not add up. I think right now, I think when you look at Bill Belichick, you think to yourself, is it possible that Belichick would leave his opportunity to coach the NFL next season to go back to college? Or really start at a place where, let's be honest, he wasn't really known for. So why is his name popped up with the University of North Carolina? Is Belichick just doing this to get an interview? Just to show that there's somebody interested in him? I didn't think that he needed to do this. Now, let's also think about this. If he takes the North Carolina job, and I don't know that he will, that would eliminate him from the possibility of being the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, being the head coach of the Chicago Bears. I'm not going to say the Jets. We know he's not going to go to the Jets. He's ripped them up and down and was with them before. That's not going to happen. But it may be the New York Giants, right? That was a place that he had success too under Bill Parcells. I don't know. This one just doesn't smell right. It feels like North Carolina is either doing this to show that they're bringing in a big name, or it's Belichick appeasing somebody to do this. I'm going to call BS on this one. I think Belichick does not take the job at North Carolina. I don't see him being involved in NILs and recruiting and all this stuff. But either way, he definitely did interview for the job there. Mac Brown, by the way, legendary coach. He is out. He was fired last week. Okay, so Juan Soto, we've gotten to Friday here before the winter meetings. Winter meetings officially, they kind of begin on Sunday, but they really, as they say, heat up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. I was there last year. They didn't heat up at all. You don't know how these are going to go. And in fact, this is the first year in a long time I'm not even going to the winter meetings. I'm actually going up to New York to see everybody at SportsGrid. Needless to say, Juan Soto is not signing with the Colorado Rockies. And apparently, the owner of the Colorado Rockies made that clear in an email. Dick Monfort, who owns the Rockies, apparently was emailed by a fan asking him to sign Soto. And better yet, is it possible that this is real? That he actually responded and said that, no, he's not going to sign with us because he wants to play somewhere on the East Coast? Come on. He wasn't going to sign with the Rockies anyway. But that is just so bizarre to see that this would actually be a response. Was this real, Frank? This is a real email? Can't imagine. Man, I think somebody made this up. I think this is AI, Photoshop, ChatGPT, something. I can't imagine that the owner would just respond to a fan in this way. But either way, Rocky's very profitable. 30, 40,000 people at the stadium every single night. They easily could get Juan Soto. They easily could afford him, but they're not going to. Just move on. All right, finally, the Texas Longhorns are not going to have their mascot in attendance for the SEC Championship. What is the name of the mascot again? So save me a click here. What? Bevo, the mascot, not going to be on hand, banned from the SEC Championship. Once upon a time when Georgia played Texas, Bevo, the big animal, went after Uga, one of the Ugas, Uga 10, 12, 15, I'm not sure which one it was. So unfortunately, not going to be on the field. In fact, this is not a big surprise. For those of you who were not watching the game between Florida State and Florida last week, you may have seen clips that have gone viral of one of the horses doing their business on the field last week that had to be scooped up. So I don't know that is the reason why, but Bevo went after Uga. And I guess does Uga still get to go? Does the bulldog still get to go? Okay. There you go. Can't say what our producer Frank just said on the air. I think I can. We're streaming. I can probably use a 4-letter word. I'm not going to do that, though. A lot of kids watching. All right. Thanks to Jake, our director, and, of course, Frank, our producer. Thanks again to Rich Cirminiello for coming on the show. Also, thanks to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report and Bill Bender from Sporting News. Great rest of the day here on SportsGrid. Make sure you catch us. And if you're curious of our schedule here, just download the SportsGrid app. Take out your phone. There you go. There's the QR code. Hit us up. All kinds of new golf information. PGA Tour season coming in January. You can learn more about that there. For those of you playing fantasy football this weekend, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. Me and George Kurtz have you ready for the upcoming week. A lot of people in the playoffs in fantasy football this week as well. So I'll see you then. If not, I'll see you back here Monday for our next edition of NewsWire as we find out who is playing in the college football playoff. Have a great weekend, everyone.